to this edition of the Killjoy podcast. I've got Dr. Matt Davies with me this time for a two-part podcast. Part 1 is going to be on the Tetramethrin reclassification news that broke in late February, and Part 2 will be based on, you guessed it, coronavirus, or specifically COVID-19. So let's get straight into it because there is a lot to discuss here. So first onto the Tetramethrin, Matt. What's actually happened?
Hi, Eden. Yep, Tetramethrin as an active ingredient has been reclassified, and products containing tetramethrin at 1% and above will have a relabelling, and the label phrase to be added to that is suspected of causing cancer.
Yeah, so cancer's a very scary word. Should we be worried?
Not necessarily. I think the suspected of causing cancer phrase has some explanation behind it, and the reassuring thing for me is that the Health and Safety Executive, the competent authority for the UK, they're continuing to authorise biocides that contain tetramethrin at 1% and above. So that's the big reassurance for me. They're happy that by following the label, pest controllers can sufficiently mitigate the risks.
Yeah, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? You did emphasise the word suspected. I'm assuming that that's a very important word in all this and all that's going on with this.
Yeah, this is it. So with the suspected phrase, what that means is tetramethrin at 1% or above goes into category 2 in terms of carcinogen activity. So a category 2 carcinogen suspected of causing cancer. That's where the evidence that exists is unconvincing. The evidence that's out there, the European Chemicals Agency for Risk Assessment Committee, the ECHA, RAC, they've noted that there are some testicular cell tumour studies showing some increases in tumour cells in 2 independent studies into rats, and that's a whole world away from the reality of day-to-day pest control and humans. So it's worth just having that as balanced information.
So is that what sort of brought on the change, those tests? Is it new information that we have?
Yeah, that's it. That's been the trigger for the reclassification. Just to compare that to category 1 items that are out there, that's where they are known to be a carcinogen. There's some human evidence. So there's category 1A, where things are known to cause cancer, and that can be things like having a beer in the sunshine.
Right.
And category 1B is where they're presumed to be a carcinogen, where there's some human evidence for that. The other important thing to say is this 1% level that triggers the reclassification. That's all about the products in the bottle. When people in our industry are using these products in homes, hospitals, other environments, that they're diluted down in water in the main, so that there's a big reduction there in the concentration.
So it's not a case of everybody just stop using your tetramethrin products and throw them all out. It's just a label change based on some new studies.
Yeah, I think there's some important things to remember. If you're doing a COSH assessment, you may find that you've got a product that can be equivalent in terms of effectiveness versus one at the 1% tetramethrin level, and that may nudge you towards picking an alternative product. I think other things to do, it's especially important to continue to keep appropriate records, treatment records and records of your COSH assessments. So if there are questions asked further down the line, then keeping those records for at least a few years will be best practice, just to show you've done things the right way, follow the label and mitigated those risks. So what
specific products are actually affected?
Best thing to do is that there are a number of tetramethrin products on the market. You can have a look through the Killjoy catalogue. You can go on the Killjoy online catalogue where it lists the relevant concentrations. But of course, we've got the technical department. Give us a ring if there's your favourite product and you want to check something with us about usage of it. Then absolutely do so. Don't be surprised when we pick up the phone. We'll trot out the usual mantra, usual but important, which is to follow the labels, read the product label. More important now than ever before. If we're reading the label and following those instructions, then the risk is absolutely mitigated to the lowest possible level. And let's continue to do our job, which is to protect public health.
So for further information, where can people go?
Good question. These podcasts are handy because it keeps you up to date in little bite-sized nuggets of information. Also, think about refresher training. The trade associations, BPCA and MPTA, it's a requirement for their membership for folks to be on a CPD scheme. So CPD and refresher training is a good way to keep up to date. We've also covered this at the Killjoy workshops. So getting onto things like that keeps you nice and on the ball. Have a read of the trade periodicals as well. Pest Control News is a good example. We've published the Tetramethrin information in there. So yeah, just keep an eye out. Technical publications, speak to your technical advisors and your area sales managers, and always get that handy update.
And this reclassification comes into play from, is it the 1st of May?
That's right. It applies from the 1st of May this year, so 2020. And so what you may find is that products coming off the shelf just before that date will already have the different phrase on. So H351, suspected of causing cancer, and there'll be the health hazard warning symbol on there, the one that looks like the exploding chest in the diamond hazard symbol. So I expect to see that on certain products. At the same time, remember that a good number of products are below the 1% concentration anyway, so business as usual as far as that's concerned. For me, this is reminiscent of the reclassification of rodenticides, toxic to reproduction.
Right.
Important that we're aware, important that we take the usual precautions, but also let's be sensible about it.
All right, so moving on to coronavirus then, which obviously is a big thing at the minute. Right from the start, I think it's very, very important to say neither me or Matt are medical practitioners. We're not here to tell you about self-isolation and telling you to wash your hands and using hand sanitizers. Matt has doctor in front of his name, but he's not a medical practitioner. This is solely coming from a pest control point of view, and the role that pest controllers are going to play. For context as well, we're recording this on the 16th of March 2020, and the time right now is 15:46. I'm telling you this because the situation is constantly changing. It seems like every hour. So by the time that you listen, the situation will likely have changed again. We can't re-record every time there's a change, or me and Matt have just been camped in this room for a long time. Now, this has been spoken about absolutely everywhere, and we have got to sort of tread carefully with what we say here. But you listen to, we've got the radio on in our office, and it's spoken about pretty much constantly. It's a song, and then someone talking about coronavirus, another song, and then coronavirus again. You put TV on, and it's all that people are talking about. But even the things that, like, the usual escape from issues like this is sport for a lot of people, and we're not even having that now. But it's like anything in the sense that everyone seems to have an opinion on what should happen going forward, short term and long term, especially in sport. And a lot of these things are kind of motivated by that person's or that team's status. Like this morning I read an article about Karen Brady thinking that the league should be null and void, and I just don't think that that's a coincidence that her West Ham team are fighting relegation, whereas I'm a Leeds United fan, and a lot of other Leeds fans and Liverpool fans, West Brom fans are desperate to see the league completed one way or another. But I think what I want to stress is that the issue is far bigger than just sport, and once people sort of take off their own team's coloured tinted glasses, I think it's clear that the real concern here is public health, and that's obviously way more important than sport. So, Matt, there is obviously a lot of panic all over the country, in fact the world, and a lot of businesses are encouraging the staff to work from home and self-isolate, but a lot of pest controllers can't actually do that. A lot of pest controllers are self-employed and they've still got bills to pay, so if they're going out to a job and to a site, then what precautions can they take to make sure that they're as protected as possible?
Yeah, good question, Ethan. I think in our industry we're very well up on hand hygiene, infection control, looking after our own health and safety as well as the health and safety of bystanders and clients. It's part of pest control. It's part of your basic training. Good example, folks that come on their first ever training course. It might be rodent control. They'll learn about Weil's disease, leptospira bacteria from rat urine and mouse urine, and the importance of hand hygiene, wearing nitrile gloves, protective coveralls to the correct standard and protection level, even to the point of with the insecticide usage, then labels and data sheets, and wearing the right respiratory protective equipment. So we're pretty hot on this kind of thing in our industry, and many pest controllers absolutely operate in the food industry, in food environments, in kitchens, production areas. So fully up to speed with hygiene measures and infection control. So yeah, sort of for many of us, it'll be business as usual.
So if you're moving on to treatments a little bit now, if a pest controller does get called to a treatment of a site where there's been an infected person or maybe suspected, what should they do? What kind of things should they be doing to to sort that?
Well, there are a number of our customers that have a business that operates in sort of two areas, perhaps pest control and hygiene services, pest control and cleaning, so that those folks will have their own experience and knowledge built up over a number of years, and they'll have their own systems in place as well as following current government guidelines. Of course, Killgerm have the PX range of disinfectants that have an efficacy claim against coronaviruses, and either using those right now or we're planning to use them in the near future for virucidal activity against the coronavirus.
See, there is, like, without wanting to sort of try and capitalise on what's going on for sort of selfish gain, but there is a lot of opportunity here for extra work for pest controllers, and good work and things that need to be done.
There is, and I think it's like any situation that you encounter in this industry. It's always a good plan to sit down, take stock of your knowledge and your experience, and decide whether that work is for you or whether it's for somebody else that perhaps has got that greater level of experience. So that sense check of what people know and what they're capable of still applies in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking on behalf of the Killgerm technical department here, what plans do you have to help pest controllers in the near future around COVID-19?
I think the best thing we can do as a technical department, and this is what we are doing, is carrying on as normal, business as usual, whilst taking account of government guidelines.
Well, thank you for joining me, Matt. Any further questions around coronavirus or pest control in general, don't hesitate to get in touch. We've got a fantastic technical team here, headed by Matt, and they're all more than happy to answer your questions and help you through the times like this. Now, for regular listeners of the podcast, you will know that this is the part where I usually tell you about the upcoming breakfast meetings and workshops for the month. But given the ongoing coronavirus situation, this will come as no surprise to anybody, but we have decided to suspend all breakfast meetings, workshops and training events just until further notice. This is just following the latest government advice regarding social contact and mass gatherings. Keep an eye on your email inbox and Killgerm social media for updates on this, and we'll hopefully have some good news for you soon. Thank you for listening. As you can tell, it's pretty reactive to the news, A, around Tetramethrin, and B, more recently, coronavirus. As I said right at the beginning of the coronavirus section, this is the situation is constantly changing and developing, and that is, as we are right now, that is where we're at with it. But yeah, just stay safe and follow the government guidelines as we are. The code that you'll need for the basis CPD points for this episode of the Killgerm podcast are CV-TM-0320. For full instructions on how to claim your CPD points for both basis and BPCA, go and listen to episode 1 and 2 of the Killgerm podcast for full instructions. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.